Hi, everybody. This is Lauren Baker with Search Engine Journal. Welcome to today's SEJ webinar. With me today, I have Patrick Reinhardt and Ali Butani, both from Conductor, our sponsor for today's webinar. Let the two of you say hi really quickly, and then I'll go through the formats and housekeeping and everything else, and let some of our stragglers come in.
All right, cool. Hey, everyone. My name is Pat Reinhardt. I lead professional services and thought leadership here at Conductor. I've been in SEO for about 20 years. Really excited to talk about forecasting some trends with Ali, and I'll pass it over to her.
Thanks, Pat. Hi, everyone. I'm Ali Butani. I am Conductor's Director of Brand. So I oversee our content design and SEO here at Conductor. I've been in B2B content marketing for about 10 years. And as Pat said, we're really excited to go over some forecasted trends for 2023 across the SEO and content landscape.
I'm really excited too, as I know our guests that are here today. So let's go through some housekeeping before we get started. Just to let everyone know, if you've attended our webinars in the past, we're changing up the format a little bit on this. This is going to be a live Q&A. So we have questions on the deck itself that Pat and Ali will be answering and speaking to. But then if you have any questions of your own that are relevant to the main topic points that we're going over today, or maybe not, just go ahead and ask away. So again, we're talking about SEO and content marketing trends that you need to know, especially for the rest of this year. The Q&A panel or the Q&A box is right there. So you can go ahead and ask the question. After you ask the question, other attendees can actually vote up the questions. So what we can do, especially if everyone's active with doing this, is vote up the questions like you would on a Reddit or back in the day Dig or whatever it may be, with thumbs up to get them to the top, and then I'll go ahead. I got to laugh, Pat, Dig. So I'll go ahead and ask the ones that bubble up to the top. Also, as you see, there is a chat box going on. So I see everyone kind of chiming in right now, saying where you're from, where you're tuning in from. I'm coming in from the LA area. How about you, Pat?
I'm here in New York.
Great. Ali?
Right outside in New Jersey.
Okay, great. Got a little bit of East Coast and West Coast, so I see everyone is going on there. And we will be launching one poll during today's presentation as well. So again, that's pretty much everything. And we're also going to do, if we have time at the end, some live Q&A if we didn't have a chance to address any of the questions that you brought up during the presentation, we can afterwards. So let's get started. Okay, so Pat and Ali, what are some unique challenges that marketers are facing with marketing performance, SEO, and content marketing?
Yeah, so I'll go first here. So, I think what's really interesting right now and where people are having a lot of challenges is where to focus both their time, their energy, and their spend, right? When I think about it, there are a lot of different ways that you can go out there and, not even just from an SEO perspective, really just from a marketing perspective. There's a lot of what I'm calling like closed environments out there that are starting to take market share away from Google, and also just trying to take mind share away from other channels, right? And what I'm mainly talking about is TikTok and Instagram, right? From a search perspective, 40% of folks of younger generations are starting their searches on Instagram and TikTok, which is really, really scary to Google, but really interesting to someone like me, because it not only gives, forces me to learn, to learn new things, but also, kind of forces us all to think differently, right? Now, from Google's perspective, Google doesn't want people to start, doesn't want them to start their searches, on TikTok and Instagram for obvious reasons. And that's why you're starting to see them become, to create more visual search, like visual search experiences, especially on mobile. If you look at knowledge panels on mobile now, they're much more visual. I run a webinar every month called 30/30, and on the last one, I showed an example of, if you input someone's height, like a celebrity's height, like how tall is Bruce Lee, I think was the example. You can see that it's not just a number, it's not just information anymore. There's a big, bold picture of Bruce Lee, and then there's, different ways that you can scroll through other, celebrities that are related to him and their heights. Very odd example, I know, but it's a very visual experience, right? And you can see that shift coming. And what that does, it presents it presents a large challenge for marketers because it's a different way that we have to think about, our approach, right? And again, not just from SEO, from an SEO perspective, but just from an overall marketing and spend perspective. Where do brands spend their time? Do I spend X amount of time on Google, and how I'm still pumping money into Google Ads. Everybody is. SEO is becoming a bigger priority in companies, which is amazing and the right thing to do. But how much time do I spend on these other closed environments like Facebook, but especially TikTok and Instagram, which are taking a lot of the future market share away from Google? And then you also have the the introduction of AI into all of this, with Bing starting to encroach into Google, and we'll talk a little bit about AI in a second. But from that perspective, that's one area to think of, is where do people's attention go, right? Like where does my spend go? Where does my focus go? Where do I tell my teams to focus? Do I tell them to focus X amount of time on these alternate environments like TikTok and Instagram? Or do I just keep them kind of pounding on the traditional channels or the traditional environments like Google? And I think that that's something that a lot of companies are kind of wrestling with right now. Of course, my specialty is SEO. So talking just about SEO, I think one of the other unique challenges that folks are facing is the overall volatility of Google's algorithm. It has been absolutely backcrap crazy out there over the last 2 years, and it's only intensifying. When I think about it, when you go back to, a couple of years ago and you're looking at all of those sensors, right? All of the volatility sensors, whether that's in SEMrush or, there's a lot of Rank Ranger, there's a lot of them out there that Moz, the Mozcast that tracks, large swaths of keywords and the volatility within certain categories. You can see that over the last, I would say 18 months, but really the last 12 months, it has gotten insanely intense. And the big trend there, and I think the biggest challenge for people in SEO, and also in other marketing channels as well, is that Google is now starting to roll out updates on top of one another and in quicker succession. You're starting to see, like, for example, the March core algorithm update just finished rolling out. And on the heels of that, right on the back of that, what did they do? They rolled out the next reviews update, which actually is not just focused on product reviews anymore. It's just reviews in general, which is another change on top of a change. And you're starting to see these core updates roll out, once a quarter-ish, about that. But you're starting to see these subsequent updates roll out right on top of one another, sometimes within the same timeframes, but also much quicker. Typically, Google takes about 10 days to 2 weeks to fully roll out some of these updates. They have rolled out new updates as short as 42 hours over the last year. And that just tells you that they are going to continue to keep their foot on the gas. They're going to keep pushing people to make their websites better. But also, that's something that we have to take into account, that we just have to, we have to focus and be aware that Google is going to constantly be changing, and the SERPs, or the search engine result pages, and all the featured snippets and all the different result types out there are going to keep shifting, and they're going to keep testing. And why? It's because of these closed environments that are starting to encroach on them, and especially TikTok and Instagram. Again, that 40% of new searches starting on those platforms for younger generations, that's very scary to Google. And that's why they're changing and testing and creating a more visual experience right now, because they are trying to protect their future. And we all have to be prepared for that. We all have to be prepared for this shift that will come with a new generation, and also Google changing very swiftly to adapt to that change coming. That's my perspective on it. But Allie, would love to hear from the content side what you think.
Yeah, I think all really valid points, and kind of weave into some of the trends that we're seeing from an overall marketing perspective, and specifically in content marketing. I think fluctuations in marketing strategy is one of the biggest challenges that marketing teams and content teams are going to be faced with. And that's not unique to 2023 and what we're currently dealing with. It feels like ever since 2020, the only constant that marketers have been faced with is change. So we kind of went into 2020, the pandemic hit, and since then there have just been constant shifts in marketing strategy from the top, constant shifts in the economic climate. So the beginning of the pandemic, a lot of us remember budgets and resources were cut. Paid media shut off instantly. There was much more of an emphasis on content marketing and SEO. And there were drastic changes in headcount and budget that marketing teams had to deal with. And then kind of trailing off from that a little bit, there was a huge hiring boom and there was the great resignation. And with that, a lot of changes in strategy. Okay, we went from not having any budget to all of a sudden having this influx of budget. How do we do more? How do we kind of recoup? I think most brands really leaned into being digital first, which is an important trend and almost kind of like a catalyst for where folks needed to be. Both from a business perspective and a consumer perspective, everything starts online now. And then more recently, in the tech sector specifically, we're seeing kind of with the threat of an impending recession, we're seeing more layoffs across tech, and we're really seeing fluctuations in budget, which obviously has a downstream effect. How does marketing do more and kind of support the team with potentially less resources? And then recently, of course, the collapse of SVB that always kind of throws a wrench into what are we, the tech sector, marketing teams, et cetera. But a lot of the insights that we're seeing, we as Conductor recently conducted a research study at the end of 2022 to see how SEO and content marketing performed over the course of the year and what folks were feeling in terms of 2023 projections. So I have 2 slides I wanted to share with some data points from our findings. So we asked about 2023 projections in terms of marketing goals. Do you expect your goals to decrease, remain the same, or increase? And as you can see, the great majority of folks are expecting marketing goals to increase for this coming year. But as I mentioned, kind of a big trend that we're seeing is hesitancy around the kind of economic climate right now. So when we asked, how do you expect your SEO and content marketing budget will change? Astounding majority of folks are expecting their budget to remain flat or decrease. So I think that kind of begs the question, where is the disconnect and how are we going to kind of reconcile a decrease in budget with an increase in goals and expectations? And obviously, kind of at Conductor, when we think about SEO and content marketing, we really understand the power of organic. And we are hoping that teams will kind of really look at their spend across channels, look at the ROI, what channels are performing best for you, and really kind of assess where you're investing your dollars, where they'll work the best for you. You might have less headcount than you did a few months ago. Your budget might have decreased. Your marketing priorities might have changed. It's getting harder and harder to kind of take a dwindling budget, put it into paid media, and get the results that you're expecting. So rather than also just kind of, let's say your budget was cut 20%, what we see a lot of marketing teams doing is cutting 20% across the board. And that's not going to benefit you. It's not the best way to kind of approach differences in your budget and doing more with less. Instead, what we're recommending is really taking a look at your different channels, your spend, and understanding what's not working for you. Cut that completely this year. And what is working for you, double down and invest heavier there. Really kind of do a clear analysis, take a look at your metrics, and kind of resource and work with your team to invest in the channels, organic, that are going to provide the highest ROI and really give you the best results from what your audience is searching for.
I think both of you brought up some very interesting concepts, especially the popularity of Instagram, TikTok, Snap, etc., with not only search but discoverability or learning. Right? It used to be like back in the day that only certain companies could afford commercials either on network television or cable television. Mm-hmm. And typically you would have 2 or 3 brands competing against each other. Now on Instagram, if I like an ad for like basketball socks or like sensitive skin shaving cream, I'm suddenly going to get ads on Instagram from 50 different brands. Maybe 10, 20 different brands. It's almost like happens when you do a search on Amazon and you get introduced to all of these brands that you don't remember the names of. So one thing I like to do, and I've seen a lot of companies doing, is they'll say, oh, they'll do a blog post or a page we are the sensitive skin shaving cream ad you saw on Instagram, or we are this that you saw on TikTok. Because what happens is when you're overwhelmed by all of those brands, sometimes you just can't remember, but you remember it was cool and you saw it on that specific channel, and you'll search for it, and then it gives you the ability to pop up. So yeah, it can be a very overwhelming time right now. Speaking of big brands and competing with big brands, especially with developing budget for the year, we had an interesting question that came through from Chris. Chris asks, can a smaller local business compete with major national brands for top search results, generic topics? For example, a local allergist might run a site or a blog and try to rank for allergy shots, but how can they compete with Mayo Clinic, Healthline, WebMD, et cetera, with securing a competing spot in the Google search results?
Yeah, and the answer is yes. You can, but it really depends on the query that you're going for, right? Like the term allergy shots is a very, very broad term, and that's where you're going to get Wikipedia, Mayo Clinic, WebMD, et cetera, et cetera. I would really focus on the location that you're going for, and not even just near me terms, right? Like I'm not even just talking about near me terms. It's really like the physical location of the city, the town, the county, et cetera, et cetera. Because I think from that perspective, like what a lot of small businesses do, especially as they're getting their SEO campaigns and expanding their SEO knowledge, the mistake that they make is like they look at the monthly search volume that has the highest number, right? And that's not the way to do it, right? What you're trying to do is, especially for a business like that, is you're trying to get foot traffic in the door, for your specific location. So while you can certainly I would actually use allergy shot as the modifier and think about the location of the office that you're or offices, excuse me, if you're more of a national brand or, you have offices in multiple places, think about it from that perspective, right? Think about optimizing your Google My Business listings, and things like that. I wouldn't just go after like the term allergy shots and try to rank for that. You're more than likely not going to rank for that. And the funny thing is, if you did rank for that, you probably wouldn't get the traffic or get the results that you were expecting, because that's more of an informational term, right? You would really want someone looking for an allergy shot, somewhere to receive an allergy shot, for this, or or even specific allergies. If someone has specific allergies, you could build out content around that. The more specific that you get there, and the more location based that you get there for terms like that, the better off you'll be. Because a lot of people, what they'll do is they'll dump a lot of time, money, into buying links and building content and things of that nature, and a lot of that will probably be for naught. Because even if you got into one of those coveted spots for that, again, you probably wouldn't get the traffic that you want. You want to get very specific for things like that, and I think location, is the way to go. And then thinking about how do you optimize your local search listings, would be where I would spend my time. But you can compete with those brands. Just I wouldn't compete. It's like it's knowing where to compete with them, not just, hey, I'm just going to go after this big broad term. Compete with them in your space, right? Compete with them in your area, because you're really going after the local, the local listings. Like you should try to get someone typically to a doctor's office. If you're more of a publisher and things of that nature, again, specificity will be the key to your success there.
Anything to add, Ali? Or should I skip to the next question?
No, I think Pat covered it. I was going to say, one of the things that kind of we focus on in terms of our content and SEO strategy is not just going after kind of the largest MSB keywords, like really looking at more niche long tail keywords, especially if it's an area where it's really difficult to kind of compete. So understand your competitive differentiator as a company, and think about what your audience is really looking for and the value that you can provide, independently kind of from your perspective.
Awesome. All right. Next question is, how can incorporating SEO and content marketing into overall marketing strategies help move the needle?
Yeah, I think from an SEO perspective, this is one of my favorite topics to talk about, because I think a lot of folks undervalue the power of the SEO process, right? Or the power and value that SEO can add to the process. for overall marketing strategies, because it's not just about ranking. And a lot of folks, I get questions every week like, hey, I'm just trying to rank for XYZ. And I always ask them like, well, are you trying to rank? Or are you trying to own that space? Like, what are you really trying to do? Do you just want to own one keyword, or are you trying to make an impact on a universe of keywords and also become an authority in that space, right? And the right way to think about it is the latter, right? That you want to come in and you want to build content that, yes, connects with people and isn't just some, AI generated, thing that no one will read. You want to come in and you want to make a name for your brand, right? You want to answer a question, solve a problem, get experts to back you up so that your authority in that space moves up, right? And from that perspective, that's not just an SEO thing, right? That's a lot of departments within your business, right? And over the years, I've always felt that SEO is an untapped source of information for other areas of your business, especially marketing and PR and things of that nature. Because think of marketing, just even content marketing in general. And Ali, I promise not to steal your thunder here, but from that perspective, if the entire process of getting a piece of content created is not this, hey, we're going to push a button and all of a sudden everyone's going to follow this process and move along, right? Why? Because people don't want to change their behavior. People don't want to change the way that they do things. Like going in and asking someone to use a platform like Conductor, or simply just go in and do keyword research before they write a piece of content, is a change to their process. It's a change to their day-to-day. And people don't like change. Humans inherently don't like change because they become comfortable. And when they believe something is working, then they will continue to press it. Hey, I'm going to continue to do this thing is working. Now, when you incorporate SEO best practices into it, you have to be very mindful of that. And also tell them, like, you come in, and I do these talks all the time at companies where, like, I go in and the first thing I always say is, I'm not here to change your job, right? Like, my job here today is not to change yours. What I'm here to do is to make your job easier and also provide a way that you can see the impact of it on the bottom line of your business or of your group's overall goals. And when you start a conversation like that, and that really gets people thinking differently. And if you want to move the needle in your overall marketing operations, you got to get people to start thinking a little bit differently and thinking a little bigger than they're probably thinking today. Because the cool thing about SEO is that SEO can make your entire team work better if it's done properly, right? If you come in and you get folks to say, hey, before we write this piece of content, even before we ideate this piece of content, let's go out there and see what people are talking about in our space, right? And typically, and I usually do this live, right? And I'll go in and I use Conductor, but whatever tool you use, that's all good. You go out there and you say, hey, like, look at all of these keywords and look at all these topics and all these questions that people are asking about our product, our service, our business, what have you, whatever it is. And then you can start a really healthy conversation on, oh, okay, it's like, cool, we can start building a content calendar around this. And then you can start distributing work. And in that process, you can start teaching the 101 of SEO best practices. And that is, how to do keyword research properly. And then all of a sudden you start to see this shift, right? And then it takes time. This isn't something you're going to go in one meeting and it's going to happen. It's going to take time, but over time you'll start to see this shift of, oh yeah, I was using our keyword research, the part of our platform is called Explorer. We were using Explorer to gain, to figure out where our keywords are. And all of a sudden you see, wow, everyone started doing keyword research before they wrote. And then as you go along, you're like, okay, cool. And then the content team goes, hey, we've written this piece of content, and they get it implemented, right? Now you have the other side of it where it's like, hey, we actually have to get this stuff implemented onto the site, which, as everybody here probably knows, is the hardest part about SEO, is getting things actually physically put onto your site. So then you start to create relationships between those two groups, right? And again, if you want to really move the needle, you got to get a lot of these groups thinking bigger and working together. And then ultimately, if you get these things all aligned, right? People, the content folks are doing keyword research. They're writing their content with SEO in mind. You're setting up auditing that's kind of always on, and thinking, and they're thinking about, the tech team is thinking about this at all times. And then all of a sudden, SEO moves from being this tactical thing to this cultural thing. And if you can make SEO a cultural thing within your organization, that is when the magic really happens. And that's when you really move the needle, because you have all these teams working together in unison, and you have technology underneath it, and it's data driven. You have reporting around it. Everyone understands that when they do something, it has an impact. And that is when you can really get all of these groups together. And then all of a sudden you get into what I call the always on mentality. And SEO is always on. The site is always being audited by the tech team. The site is always being SEO'd by the content team and whoever talks about it. The content that we create is socialized by the PR and marketing teams. And you create this beautiful system that people can go into. And really when you get to that, and again, it's not a short thing. It takes time to get there. But when you do, it's pretty beautiful. And you can see that, that's when you can really move the needle. When you get that process in place, that's when the magic really happens. Ali, love your thoughts on this as well.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think even I'm going to kind of speak from experience at Conductor. Before I worked for Conductor too, I worked at an agency, and I actually come from a design background. So design has a lot of the same hardships I think that SEO has, in that you're normally the last stop on the train before something goes live. You're normally an afterthought, and you normally need to kind of fight to get in the room when the strategy and the beginnings of those conversations are happening, in order to kind of affect change and create more of like a streamlined workflow and a better workflow and a better end product. But it's hard to kind of embed yourself at the beginning of the process when you're typically looked at as like an end piece of the process. So what I was able to do at Conductor, and what has been really working phenomenally for us, is kind of aligning all of those teams. Pat, like you said, it's not when SEO, content design, web, when all of these different teams work in silos, that's when you have problems, because people are going off, creating strategies, creating content, doing their own work, and there's no alignment. So there's a lot of duplicative work. There's a lot of pulling people in at the last minute. There's a lot of looking at SEO, like you're SEOing a piece of content before it goes live, which is absolutely not the way to do things. I think from my perspective as a content marketer, if you're an SEO trying to get your content team to listen and you're having a hard time, there are some recommendations I have that I think will work really well. And one of them, we talk about kind of when you're an SEO and you're trying to get buy-in, whether that's from executives or your content team, what you need to do is understand their perspective. What are the important things to them? What's going to make them shift the way that they do things in order to kind of implement this new process? And right now in particular, content marketers have the hardest time promoting and driving traffic to their content, and then proving ROI and measuring their content. And if you can embed yourself in those problems, if you can say, hey, look, your content distribution, your efforts there are going to be a lot less if we incorporate SEO into the overall content strategy, because in addition to this webinar and this paid media campaign and this email campaign, you're going to be driving a ton of organic traffic to the content that you create. It's almost like a huge bonus. And especially when we think about doing more with less, as a content team this year, what you really need to do is get extremely laser focused on what you're committing to doing. And I would even say if something is not rooted in SEO, if it doesn't align directly to your marketing goals, it doesn't get done this year. Especially if you're a team of one or a team who's strapped to do things. There are a lot of creative initiatives that content teams want to do. They want to publish that blog post about Mother's Day. They want to kind of put this culture piece out there. If that's not driving organic traffic to your website, if it's not converting leads, if it doesn't align to your goals, it's not something that needs to be prioritized this year. You need to be super laser focused on really kind of doing more with less. Every single piece of content that you publish needs to be working towards your goals and your metrics. So again, to kind of go back to how to embed your content and SEO and design and web teams together. Once you can kind of have those conversations, and really need to start at a strategy level. It's great if you can kind of all get on the same page, discuss either large gated pieces of content, blog strategy, etc. But essentially what you need to do is align your content strategy and your SEO strategy so that both teams are sharing resources and working together. That's undoubtedly the most effective way to kind of move forward and work together. And another huge benefit that SEO has on content marketing and your content strategy is the insights and data that you're able to kind of provide the content team. So really kind of coming at it from a data-driven perspective, these are the topics that are resonating the most with our audience. These are the topics that we're performing really well at. So we can probably monitor those, kind of optimize as needed. And then here's where we're not showing up at all. Here's all of these topics and all of this content that our competitors are grabbing market share, grabbing traffic from, that we really kind of need to prioritize in order to be in the same space and have the same conversations. And then here are some opportunities that, you know, we can take advantage of that you know, competitors might not be ranking for, and we have a unique perspective on. So I think really coming at it from that perspective. And then one other recommendation I would have that has benefited us really well is taking a look at our content performance over the course of the past year, using the insights from organic. These are the pages that are driving the most traffic. These are the content topics that our audience is the most interested in. Use those insights when you're thinking about what content to promote across other channels. Content is not just blog posts, articles, gated assets. Content is holistic. It's the themes and the topics that you talk about in your PR. It's the webinar topics that you're creating. It's topics for events that you're throwing. Look at it from a holistic perspective and use the insights from what people are really searching for and what is resonating with your audience across all of those different areas. And you'll see a real increase in engagement kind of across all of your different marketing channels when you start using the integral first-party data that you can get from SEO.
I love that, because I think a lot of SEOs, when they hear the word content marketing, they think of just written content, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Whereas like we kick this off talking about video. One stat I was just looking at is that, and I think my did I just freeze? One stat I was looking at is that there's 3 billion Instagram reels DM'd per day. 3 billion per day. Videos, reels, all of that. If you can integrate that into your overall strategy and talk about like the trend that you had on the slide earlier, there's expected performance this year with the same or lower budget, right? So the ability to sync up early on means that you're not going to have divisions overlap or do something completely different. Syncing up on strategy, making sure that the topics on the site, the content strategy for the site is synced up with the video content strategy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then with the ability to do reels, you can just take that video and chop it up, multiple pieces, add explosions, whatever you want to do, so you can keep on regurgitating, reutilizing that content. It's a great way to go about it. And then on top of that, we did have a couple questions come in that are very similar. So basically it was, how can we improve ROI of top of funnel content? We have numerous articles that rank well, but they're not generating sales. Also, I had a question coming in about how do we target and utilize user intent information to put together content that converts as well. So are there any formulas or techniques that you recommend to drive someone that may be finding an informational page into a call to action, and or ranking a piece of content for transactional intent queries?
Yeah. Allie, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I was going to say we've dealt with this issue before, and I think a lot of it is about perception in terms of content in different funnel stages. So you are going to have top of funnel content that most likely is going to be the content that you're focusing your content and SEO strategy around. That is not going, the primary goal of that content is not going to be a conversion metric. You're driving awareness, you're creating relationships with your audience, and you're probably getting pressure from management to say, okay, we have all this traffic coming into these pages. That's great, but they're not converting on a demo, or they're not downloading a white paper. You're still building relationships, you're engaging with them, and it depends on your sales cycle and how long it takes folks who first become familiar with you to kind of convert down the funnel. So don't look at that as a failure. Determine different success metrics based on the funnel stage that you're web pages or your content fall into. What I would recommend is taking a look at those pages and figuring out what the next step in the process to nurture them is. Can you provide a CTA to another page on the site that kind of dives deeper into more information and starts to nurture them down the funnel? And then take a look at kind of more of your mid-funnel pages, your mid-funnel content, and determine how you can maybe optimize those for search. Maybe those are pages and conversion opportunities that are more regularly used across like paid media and email campaigns that you can start to drive folks in from organic search as well. But all of your content should not have the exact same like measurement metrics. They serve very different purposes. You wouldn't look at a webinar and a gated piece of content the same way. They're going to perform differently. They're most likely are going to be different audiences. So I think a lot of times what we find there is just more of kind of like a leadership misunderstanding of the content in SEO in a lot of ways.
Yeah. And it's, like I couldn't agree more with that because a lot of times people are like, well, okay, we got this thing right. We got this page ranking and it's, and it's an information or educational piece of content. They're like, oh, it hasn't driven a nickel in sales or it hasn't driven one lead. Well, that wasn't its purpose. What its purpose was to get it out there, to get your brand out there and to increase your authority. Now, from an SEO perspective, like, sure, could you link it to products and things of that nature that are related to that article? Or could you have little call outs to, other areas of the sites? Absolutely. And does that help your internal link structure and internal link equity, flow? Absolutely. And those are all tactics that everyone from an SEO perspective should think about. But overall, most people, especially in this trend has been growing over the years, as most people are, kind of shopping around for what they're looking for, they're gonna test out a few other brands, especially if they don't know who you are, right? They want to get to know you. They want to get to know how, before they give you their hard-earned dollars, they're gonna, they want to learn more about you. But if you do educate them, they are more likely to come back and buy from you if you educate them. That journey is just a little bit longer than a lot of executives or a lot of leaders want to wait for, of course. But from that perspective, another way that you can think about it is that those types of that type of content is great to naturally acquire backlinks, right? And naturally acquire authority. And what you can do with that is you can use that page to bolster other pages that are converting pages, right? So if you do link a educational piece of content to a product and that educational piece of content has a high authority, you can redirect that internal equity to a converting page and help it rank higher for its universe, which are more transactional terms. So you can think of it more as a support mechanism or, for that converting page, not the page that's going to convert itself. Because I do see a lot of folks put forms on educational content and trying to make them and converting and trying to make it happen. But most of the time, that's just not the way it goes. But you can use it to bolster transactional pages and the universes that they exist in.
100%, 100%. And oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, yeah. Pat, I just wanted to chime in too. When you think about the perspective of using those like high traffic organic pages that are maybe not converting for brand awareness, think about how much that would cost if you were to put that same effort into paid media. This is essentially like, it's much more cost effective to create that brand awareness, create that top of funnel content and to drive that organically than it is if you were to have a really big brand campaign from a paid media perspective. So balance that out as well. We have calculators and estimates that we put together in terms of like, if you were to put the same amount of if you were to drive the same amount of traffic via paid search, it would cost you, exponentially more for those eyeballs and those views.
100%. And like that's a great reminder that SEO is not direct response marketing, right? Mm-hmm. Like not everyone is going to find a page in Google, click on the page, and buy immediately. Right? What they're going to do if with an informational page, it gives you the perfect chance to drop a retargeting pixel and get them into your funnel that way, possibly, or just like the call to action to sign up for an ebook, right? We do that all the time at SEJ. And then you have them in your tripwire funnel that they signed up for the ebook or whatever, and then you can get them with follow-ups and this and that and everything else. So just make sure that if you have the ability at your company to sync up with analytics and data processing in the CRM, that you can tag those users that have come in via the CRM via organic and make sure you get proper attribution for that, because a lot of the SEO mindset is very direct response marketing, and it's not that at all.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, here you go. I had a lot of questions that came through on this, so this is a two-part question. First, we're going to run a poll, and then secondly, I'd like to hear from the two of you. So what role do you see AI, machine learning, playing in content marketing in 2023? I'm going to go ahead and run this right now. Whoops. So what role do you see AI playing in SEO and content marketing in this year? A, aiding in topic generation and research. B, aiding in content creation, the actual writing and editing of content. C, aiding in analyzing data to create customer profiles and segments. Oh, I like that. D, support website personalization. E, to support quality customer service, such as chatbots. F, refreshing outdated old content. And G, none. Zero impact from AI on content marketing for this year. We have 83 responses so far. I'm gonna give a couple seconds because we only have about 20 minutes left. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and close the poll. And then here are the results. 43% see AI playing a role by actually aiding in content creation, such as writing and editing. 38 in overall ideation, topic generation, and in research. And then the rest are kind of tied for customer service, chatbots, personalization, refreshing old content, and I think one person voted none. So what do you all think about that? And any forecasting that you can do on your part when it comes to AI, ChatGPT, Bard, DuckDuckGo's Wikipedia-based AI, like whatever it may be? The floor is yours.
Yeah, I mean, we could probably have done an entire hour-long webinar on just this, and the brave soul out there, I commend you for not thinking it's going to have any impact, but I think the way I think of it, at least from an SEO perspective and a content perspective, is how's it going to impact now and how's it going to impact in the future, right? Like right now, what we're seeing is the shiny object syndrome, area that, or arena that we've entered, which is everyone's trying it out, mass adoption, OpenAI reaching, 100 million, users, in very short minute of time, like very impressive. And I can see, and it's sticking, it's sticking around even more than I thought it was going to. We talk about this at Conductor daily, and a few months ago I was like, it's going to be a slow burn. It's just, people are just think it's a cool thing right now and it's not going to stick around. But my a viewpoint has changed drastically over the last few months. And I think from that perspective, the way I see it happening right now, is that it is a great productivity tool, right? I think AI is an amazing productivity tool that people are using in very creative ways. I've seen it aid us in keyword research. Hey, give me a list of questions about wetsuits, if you're, for example, right? And it gives you that, and then you can go put that and see if there's any, search volume against that, and you can start to, to build content from that perspective, right? I've seen it, write regex and write schema markup. So for folks that don't know, aren't quick with coding, they've been able to write a lot of that a lot quicker, which is really cool, for myself included. It helps me write regex much quicker than I used to be able to, and that's been a huge boon for me. I've seen people write Python scripts with it. I've seen people create macros with it, and I think that is going to increase the amount of automation that exists in SEO, which is a good thing. That's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. The less time that us as strategists have to spend, pivoting data and, doing math and things of that nature, the better, in my opinion, because then we can stick to the strategy and get the numbers behind it a lot quicker. And then that means we can give those numbers to our teams to move quicker. And it just allows us to create an insane amount of agility within our companies, which is something I talk about a lot. That the amount of agility or the speed that you can move is very important to your SEO success. From a content perspective, certainly it's going to impact, people writing, like the way that people write content and generate ideas. I think it's a good thing in a way that it gives you a starting point, right? I think a lot of times, like, and Google has come out and said this, like, what's the difference between hiring 100 writers and writing 100 articles in AI? You're probably going to get something that's kind of like whatever at first, but then you need someone who really knows what they're doing to come in and edit and fact check that. So what I think you're going to see in content in the long, like right now, you're seeing people just using it and pumping stuff out, seeing what they get. I think in the long term, you're going to see a shift from content writers to content editors. And I think a lot more time is going to be spent. I think AI will be the starting point. And I actually think that's okay, especially as it gets smarter, as it gets more factual and things of that nature, because right now it is not, fact check at all. I still think that's a point that a lot of people don't understand, that you cannot just put something into Chat GPT and then put it on your website. A lot of times it's wrong. But then I think content writers can come in and can spend time editing those pieces of content without having to write the entirety of the article. And I think that there's a balance that we have to find there. Do I think like the end of content writing is here? Absolutely not. This is not the asteroid that a lot of people think that it is. But from that perspective, it is going to change the way that people approach content writing and approach SEO ultimately, because I think, again, from a productivity standpoint, there's a lot of benefits to it. And I think it'll help automate a lot of stuff that we shouldn't be spending our time on in the short and long term. And I think you're going to see a lot of shifts in companies from having content writers to content editors, and production will increase over time. That's what I'm thinking right now, and what I'm seeing as trends in companies that we work with.
Yeah, I think one perspective from a content marketer too is that, and I've had conversations around this, but I think authentic thought and voice are going to become more important with AI. So, like you said, Pat, I think there are going to be a lot of articles that are using AI for topic generation, that are using them and have content editors, but that will almost make the articles that have like a very unique voice and perspective even more important within content marketing. So blog posts, social accounts and social posts, people who have unique perspectives, original thought, I think it's going to sort of elevate that. And then there'll be a baseline of, okay, all content sort of sounds like this, it's authoritative. But we're even kind of experimenting here with Conductor as we're creating new articles, and authoritative articles on like how to do keyword research, how to do this, how to do that. We're incorporating more anecdotes from the writers within the articles, because that's the type of content that we enjoy consuming. When you're reading an article on keyword research and then somebody who's writing it kind of gives you an example, okay, these are the things that were challenging to me in the beginning, and by the way, this is how I kind of went about keyword research for this article. It provides a very different kind of more authentic interaction with your audience. So, and that's something that I don't think AI is going to be able to replace. So I think that'll become more important, like individual voices, thought leaders will become more important as AI becomes more mainstream. I 100% agree with you, Pat. I think this year, from a content marketing perspective, folks should be experimenting with AI. Take a look at how it can automate some of the more mundane processes that you're doing today that kind of take you away from more of the strategic work. I think it's important when we say AI, everybody automatically goes to Chat GPT. AI is not new. If you're using Grammarly as a content marketer, you've been using an AI tool for a long time, and it's most likely helped out and automated your workflow and made your content marketing better. So I don't think it's something to be afraid of. I think it's something to experiment with and understand how to leverage in a way that makes your workflow easier. And then in terms of experimenting with it, I would definitely recommend using it for when you have writer's block, and you're kind of not sure where to go next. Get a first draft going. Use it for social media promotion. Those types of really kind of short, quippy content tasks can take some time, and this can kind of be a way to reduce the amount of time that you're spending there and come up with kind of new, fresh ideas when, especially, you're writing kind of the same promotion piece for download this white paper, register for this webinar. It tends to kind of feel very monotonous. So you can get different ideas by plugging kind of prompts into Chat GPT. Same thing for like subject lines, meta descriptions, event session titles, things that typically take you a long time. Come up with a preliminary idea and then ask for a variety of options from Chat GPT and then edit from there. And then my favorite recommendation is that as a content marketer, my team, at least I know, gets a lot of ad hoc requests from throughout the organization. From, can you provide a headline for this conference session? Or can you jot up this quick kind of internal email? Or can you proofread X, Y, or Z? Those kind of miscellaneous tasks that really kind of take up a lot of your time during the week. Try to kind of use chat GPT or AI to see how much quicker you can get through those, and then you be an editor on those types of projects. So again, kind of using it to optimize your workflow and as more of a productivity tool.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah. Also, we had a lot of questions just pop up about like, how come there's no citations? Is it illegal? I'm not an attorney, but my understanding is Chat GPT is a chat bot. It's not publishing it. But when you go to when you go to Bing and you do a search that's powered by Chat GPT on Bing experiences, the citations are there, right? So the sources and citations are there when it's published on a third party. But when you're inside of OpenAI's Chat GPT and you're talking to it, it doesn't necessarily have to list the citation. So one thing to really check out too, especially if you find that AI results or AI conversations are appearing in the search queries that you typically rank for, see who the citations are on Bing, DuckDuckGo, Neva, and even like as Bard eventually rolls out 100%, and see why those citations are being utilized and anything you can do to influence and be listed in those citations as well, because all of those results do drive the user to the citation or the site that they're getting the information from, which can then become search traffic for you. Okay, we have about 7 minutes for questions. So if there hasn't, I'm going to go through everything in the questions here. One that came up is, what are some differences or updates that you've noticed? And Pat, you got into this a little bit with the recent Google product review update.
Yeah, the recent reviews update is actually not just focused on products, which I think is the big thing, right? It's reviews about anything. So it doesn't just impact sites that focus on product reviews. It could be a review literally about everything. I think in the release, it does say the word just generally things. So what I've noticed there is that a lot of folks that were struggling with the earlier product review updates saw further declines here, which is a shame. But for the most part, I've seen a wider array of sites being impacted by this, because it was interesting. The last product reviews update, we started to see a lot of sites that were not mainly product reviews were not a huge percentage of their site, right? Like that were being impacted. Maybe they were 2 to 5% of their site was product reviews, but we saw the entirety of the site being impacted. And that happened a lot. That happened across a lot of sites, and you can go out there and Google it. A lot of strategists and a lot of folks in the industry were talking about this. And from here, I saw kind of like a further iteration of that so far. It's still rolling out. That's the other thing to notate, that it's still rolling out. We're only a few days into it, so I don't want to get too ahead of myself. But for the most part, what I'm seeing so far is further pushing down that road, where it's not just sites that are like the majority of the content is product reviews, or it's just on the URL to URL basis. It seems to be more site-wide now. Like if you have any review update, or any type of review content, or you're affiliated with any type of review content, it seems to be impacting you site-wide, not just on the URL level. But that's what I'm seeing so far. But again, still very early into the rollout. But the big change is that it's not just focused on products; it's focused on all review content.
Great. Okay, I had another interesting question come in. What about voice search? I remember there was a stat by 2020, like 60% of search was going to be voice search. Now it's 2023. Not sure if we're quite there yet. Will voice search actually play a significant role as the experts and talking heads expect it to?
No, and don't get me wrong. I used to be one of the talking heads that was pumping voice search. I did a whole presentation on it at Brighton SEO many years ago. I think it was 2018. And what happened here, in my opinion, is that folks didn't realize, none of us really recognized that, number one, they were never going to release any of the data from any of the home devices, right? So like we have no idea what people ask an Echo or what people ask a HomePod or any of them, or Google Dots and things of that nature. So we never got any way to make it measurable, and we never got any data from it. And then two, well, a lot of people didn't realize, and which I did in a subsequent presentation at Brighton SEO a year later, I think, was that most people don't ask their home assistants any of the questions you see in those fancy commercials, right? Like they don't ask, how do I burn the duck? What should I make for dinner? You know what they ask their home assistants? Turn on Spotify, turn on the lights, yes. Turn up the temperature. What time is it? They use it to turn on the radio. And what happened there, in my opinion, is that most people still use those devices for mostly voice commands and not actually asking questions. And my guess is when these companies are looking into this data, they see most of it saying like, turn Taylor Swift on Spotify, and it's like, well, I don't think we're going to be able to put ads around that and make any money off of it. So my estimation or call on that is that voice search will just remain where it is today. It is a way that people use, they use it for commands for very specific things. They like to dictate things, but it's not really, they ask Siri things, here and there, but it's mostly for voice commands. So we're probably never going to see it be or at least in the near term, be a major inflection point in search.
I also think we probably underestimated how quickly behaviors change, especially with like the younger generations. I know we thought, okay, younger folks have Apple Watches and iPhones, and like they're only using voice search, and they immediately kind of shifted to TikTok. And now we're talking about visual search on TikTok. I think we just have to anticipate that trends, especially with like Gen Z and the younger generations after that, are going to shift like even more rapidly than we're used to right now. So that's just my 2 cents.
Yeah. Snap was well ahead of the curve when it came out, right?
Yep.
So pretty amazing. And then we have a couple minutes left, but a really quick question that came through, which I find interesting given the topic matter of today. Someone's going to launch a new product from scratch and they have a limited marketing budget. Where should they start? Instagram, Google, Facebook. Would you recommend SEO, PPC, social media, buzz? Like any recommendations there? Let's say a B2C product.
Yeah, from an SEO perspective, certainly don't dump all of your budget into SEO at first, because SEO takes a long time. So I would put and this is just a quick response, put a portion of it into SEO and get the ball rolling. And then Allie, I would throw it over to you for any ideas you have for the rest of it.
I would say it very much depends on what type of business and product, but I would actually invest in organic social and like influencer marketing next. I think that would probably be the fastest way to kind of get your voice out to a wide variety of audiences without breaking the bank with like really expensive paid brand campaigns. You've seen it with like Glossier and a lot of different brands, like kind of organic grassroots and influencer marketing, I think can go a really long way in today's climate. That is, again, dependent on what type of product and what type of industry you're in. B2B, I think, is definitely very challenging and would probably be a little bit of a different strategy, I would say.
Yeah, a lot of B2B and even like software and SaaS, it's all listicles, right? It's social proof listicles. So I would say also go after that in the B2C side too. Like you may see like a top 10 article from, I don't know, dallasnews.com or something like that, ranking everywhere. So see if you can get listed there. So like investing in external and marketplace oriented opportunities as well as your own site is great. Pat and Allie, thank you so much for jumping on today, going over this webinar. Just a reminder to all attendees, we're going to be making a video available along with the slides, which you can now actually download in the handouts section of of our SEJ Big Marker webinar package. And we'll be following up with you in email with all of the good links, everything that we talked about today. If there's any questions that came through that we didn't have a chance to answer, we'll be sending them over to Pat and Ali to take care of. And this will all be available in our recap post on SEJ. So thanks again to the team of Conductor. You've always been a great partner for us. And thanks again for jumping on today and sharing this information. Our next SEJ webinar is going to be on Wednesday, April 26th. Same bat time, same bat channel. 3 simple Google Ads tweaks that immediately boost sales, brought to you by Corey Zeman at Guaranteed PPC. Pat and Ali, anything you'd like to say before we jump off?
No, just thank you all for joining. It was a great conversation.
Yeah,
thank you very much.
Lauren.
Thank you too. And thank you to all of our attendees. See you on the next SEJ webinar. Thank you.
Thanks, y'all.